Chapter 61.
Zelda couldn't ever remember feeling so safe. Though perhaps safe wasn't the right word. She'd always felt safe in Link's presence, at least since their run-in with the Yiga in the desert. But she also didn't think it was contentment. She wished it was. But even though she was happy, her heart full of love for this man who had put himself through so much for her, there was still a part of her that worried, that feared, that dreaded. So what was it? What did she feel? Hope. That was it. That was the unfamiliar, alien feeling that she experienced while sitting atop that hill with him. She felt hope burgeoning within her in a way that it never had before. She felt like a drowning woman coming up for air. There was pain, yes, but there was hope in her life now. She could live without having to fear Ganon's impending rise. She would never have to hear its accursed voice in her head again. Never have to feel its power touching hers, tainting hers. Never again have to be hurt by it. The thoughts and emotions nearly overwhelmed her, but she closed her eyes tightly, pushing such things down. She would not cry, not right now. Link had dozed off, head leaning against hers. She could feel his rhythmic breaths playing across her hair. She could smell him too. The familiar scent of grass, sweat, and horse that she'd grown so fond of during their travels. Even after so long, he still smelled the same. That was a greater comfort than she thought she would ever be able to admit to him. But even after so long, after his memory loss, after his trials, Link was still her Link. Oh, there were differences, she knew, just as she wasn't the same as she'd once been. Zelda suppressed a shiver. She'd been mad once, more than once. She could remember it. The madness that set in after decades spent in the presence of a creature that was, likewise, quite mad. She'd hated Ganon more than anything, but there were times that she'd loved it too, in a twisted manner. She could remember it like a dream, like a nightmare. But not anymore, she told herself. That is all over. Now there's just me and Link, and an entire kingdom. She sighed softly, closing her eyes. She understood her duty. She understood what she should do. Yet, she didn't want it. It was the truth. She didn't want to be queen. She wanted to live a simple life with Link. They could travel together, sleeping under the stars. She could find new things to study. He could enjoy the wild that he loved so much. Or they could live at his little house in Hateno village. Would that be so bad? Would it be so wrong? Was she being selfish? Didn't she have the right to be? Hadn't she sacrificed enough? And what of Link? She knew that he didn't want to be king. She'd witnessed some of his conversations with Cass, of course. She also knew him. She knew his heart. He had the potential to be a wonderful king. She truly believed that. But he would hate it. He would hate the politicking, the lack of freedom, the burden. He would hate it as much as she had. But she also knew that he would do it, for her. He'd always done so much for her. But didn't he deserve the right to choose? He'd once told her that he loved being by her side. That was all he wanted. She wasn't sure if she believed him then, but she did now. Yet, would that remain if it meant giving up this? The sun warmed her skin as she glanced around. Birds called from nearby trees. She could overhear water flowing somewhere nearby, likely beneath the cliff. Somewhere she heard a woodpecker tapping away at a tree. Insects chirped. A gentle breeze swished through grasses and leaves. Oh, how she loved this too. She closed her eyes and just listened for a time. She just listened. She listened to the sound of nature and Link's slow, steady breathing. And then she heard a voice, a quiet voice at the edge of her mind. She'd heard it before. "Thank you," it said. "Thank you for helping my master." Her eyes shot open. The Master Sword. She'd only heard it once before, in that awful moment when she wept over Link's dying form, his head in her lap. That day it had told her to save Link. It hadn't told her of the Shrine of Resurrection. She already knew of that. But it had told her that he could hold on. He was strong enough to hold on. That he could be saved. You can still speak to me." She spoke in the barest whisper so as not to wake Link. She received a quiet acknowledgement, not in words, but in the sense of almost words. "Your power." She understood. She could hear the Master Sword, not because of a bond with it, as the legends spoke of the hero having with it, but because of her power. The power that made the Master Sword and the power within her were related, perhaps even the same. Zelda wanted to ask questions of the sword. She thought that she should have many, yet at that moment she couldn't think of a single one. Finally, she whispered, "Thank you for keeping him safe." The sword gave her another silent acknowledgement and then fell silent. Zelda exhaled slowly and closed her own eyes, and soon she too fell asleep. She awoke some time later. For a moment she was confused. Hyrule stretched out before her, beautiful and alive. But her perspective was wrong. Why could she see the castle? Why was she facing the field from this direction? Why? Zelda inhaled sharply, eyes widening. She felt Link squeezing her more tightly around the shoulder. He was there. She was there. And Ganon was gone. "You all right?" Link asked, voice laced with concern. Yes. Yes! She was all right. She was... Ganon is gone. The thought rang out in her head. She knew it. Conceptually, she knew it. But did she understand it? The madness, the hatred, the destruction, the death. It was all gone. Zelda, what is it? The malice was gone. That presence that left her feeling so cold for so long. The pain that had attacked her again and again and again. The despair, the anguish, the hopelessness. Something powerful built within her, but she tried to stop it. She quickly shook her head, opening her mouth to speak. I'm... Her voice choked. No, stop. Not this. I have to be... What? What did she have to be now? She was free. At once, everything crashed down on her. She was free. Ganon was gone. Everything they fought for had come to pass. The deaths had not been in vain. The torture had been for a purpose. The land would heal. She broke. Link's arms encircled her, just as they had upon Mount Lanayru so many years ago. Holding her close as she wept, she turned to him, clutching his tunic and pressing her face to his shoulder. It was all she could do. She could hear him whispering words of comfort. She could feel his lips upon her head, but she could feel him trembling too. He understood what she was feeling better than anyone else ever would. She clung to Link, sobbing and releasing the emotions that she'd previously kept locked away. Anger, hate, sorrow, grief. Grief for a life that could have been. Grief for friends and family long gone. Grief for friends lost so recently. Urbosa, Mifa, Daruk, Revali. She would never see or speak with them again. And relief that the calamity had ended. Eventually she heard and felt him crying too. His cries were softer than hers, more reserved, yet that simple expression of emotion, and his willingness to share it with her, seemed more intimate than 1,000 kisses. It only made her cling to him more desperately. In time, they both settled. Her cries became whimpers, her breaths coming in hitching gasps. She pulled away from him enough to be able to look at him. Somehow, she had ended up in his lap again, also just like on the mountain. It brought forth a spark of mirth that made her give a watery laugh, which only seemed to confuse him. I'm sorry. It all... I know. He cupped her cheek, smiling, though his dirty cheeks were streaked by tears. It's overwhelming. It's over. Yeah. It's over, Zelda. He paused and then brightened even further. We did it. We really did, didn't we? He wiped her cheek with his thumb and nodded. You'll never have to go through anything like that again. She sniffed and reached up, using the heels of her palms to wipe her eyes. How long have you been awake? About an hour. You could have woken me. He shrugged, and then he kissed her. She could certainly get used to his newfound confidence. Of course, he was the first to admit his feelings. And then it occurred to her that she was still on his lap. What would Impa say if she saw them now? Or worse, Pura? When Link finally pulled away, his expression remained warm and content. You could have woken me first. Apparently we were both tired. I wonder why, she said, sniffling. Link's eyes twinkled with mirth. Romance is exhausting. She rolled her eyes. That just makes it sound like... She trailed off. Oh, never mind. He laughed, though she noticed a flush appearing on his cheeks. She felt it on her own as well. Their position was potentially quite compromising after all, yet neither of them made a move to change. He's got so much more open, bold. She liked it. He just seemed so much freer now, unshackled. Could she truly put shackles on him once again? I guess we should eventually go back, she finally said. Link's smile faded some, but after a moment he nodded. Yeah, there are a few people that have been waiting a long time to be able to see you again, though we can make them wait as long as you want. Very tempting, but perhaps I've made them wait long enough. He searched her eyes for a moment and then nodded. She eased herself off of his lap, wincing at the stiffness in her muscles from their position. How long had it been since she felt sore? Then again, how long had it been since she slept? Link stood, groaning softly and placing hands against his back, stretching. Then he reached down and pulled her to her feet. The grass tickled the bottoms of her feet pleasantly, and she wiggled her toes, enjoying the feeling. Smiling, she slipped her feet into her sandals and bent to do up their straps. She would need to get some new clothes. Proper boots. You just need to open up the map and select the location you want to travel to, Link said, nodding towards the Sheikah slate. which hung from the belt wrapped around her torso. "Oh, I'm sure I can figure it out," she said, as a matter-of-factly. She removed the Sheikah slate and opened it up, eyeing the new icons. So many things that she wanted to experiment with. What were the limits of the stasis rune? How heavy an object could magnesis lift? Could she test the explosive force created by the bombs? And she was positive that there was more possible with the Cryonis rune, based on how the divine beast Vah-Ruta made use of it. But no, experimentation would have to come later. For now, she opened up the map. She found the pair of villages and glanced up towards Link. "Where do you think we should go?" He considered. Finally, he said, "Hateno village. I think that's where they would have gone, assuming they're back already." The two of them appeared on the hill overlooking Hateno village. Zelda looked around with a smile, taking in the sight of the laboratory, the telescope, the pieces of Guardians, and even the strange sign atop the lab that looked like Pura's goggles. She's never going to change.
"Now that she's discovered how to change her age at will?"
Link asked.
"No, definitely not."
That gave Zelda pause. Pura could, essentially, be immortal. In fact, if she were to make that technology available to others, anyone could be. Her mind began to race with the possibilities, both good and bad. Certain illnesses could go extinct, as the elderly were more susceptible to them. It could be a fantastic tool for healing, too, again due to youthful bodies recovering from sickness and injury quicker than elders. And how would changing a body's age affect injuries in the first place? But other things could become an issue. Overpopulation, hunger, homelessness. And what if it became something only the rich could afford? The upper crust of Hyrulean society could become filled with selfish immortals, while the poor lived and died. Zelda knew how Pura could be a bit greedy at times.
"You're theorizing again,"
Link suggested, raising an eyebrow. "No, I'm just..." Zelda paused. "Speculating."
"There's a difference?"
"Yes." The door to the lab slammed open, and Zelda's attention was brought back to the present. Pura stood in the doorway, looking exactly the same as she had 100 years prior, with the exception of the maroon streak of color in her hair, even down to her choice of clothing. Even knowing what to expect, it caught Zelda off guard. For a moment, she was transported back to the past, before everything went wrong.
"Zelda!"
Pura cried and rushed forward. Feeling tears forming at the corners of her eyes, she hurried forward and embraced her old friend. Pura hugged her tightly and laughed. She laughed too, and the two of them rocked back and forth.
"It's about snapping time you decided to show up again,"
Pura said, voice thick with emotion.
"Do you know how bored I've been, surrounded by dolts all the time?"
"Oh, I'm sure you've made do. Don't forget, there was a time that I wasn't much more knowledgeable than the common person either." Pura scoffed.
"You were always sharper than anyone I've met since the Calamity. And don't even get me started on Linky over there. He was hopeless without you around."
She heard Link made a derisive grunt.
"Always 2 steps behind on everything. Could have solved the Guardian problem even quicker than if he'd just..."
"Princess." Zelda looked up and saw Impa standing in the doorway, her granddaughter Paya just behind her. In a way, seeing Impa was even more of a shock than Pura. The Sheikah woman looked so aged now. Paya, in the meantime, could have been Impa's younger twin.
"Impa!"
She disengaged from Pura and hurried to the woman.
"Oh, it's so good to see you all. I'm just so happy you're here."
"I wasn't about to up and die before seeing you again," Impa said, clutching at Zelda's dress. "I'm so proud of you." She felt emotions welling up in her again, a mixture of joy and shame that threatened to overwhelm her. Her friends had not led easy lives following the calamity. In a way, each of them had been instrumental in keeping the pockets of Sheikah and Hylian society together, but none more than Impa. "Thank you. Thank you for everything you did to see this day finally arrive," Zelda said. She pulled away, smiling tearfully at the old woman. Then she saw Robbie standing just behind her, and her emotional turmoil only grew stronger again. He too looked old, though not quite as wrinkled or bowed as Impa was. His eyes still held a certain youthfulness, perhaps due to his marriage to the much younger Jaren.
"I knew we'd meet again,"
Robbie said, grinning. Zelda embraced him tightly, as she had the others. "Thank you. I don't know if we could have done it without you."
"Nonsense," Robbie said, returning her embrace. "You would have figured it out in the end. You and Link both."
She shook her head. "No, you all came through for us. Thank you for taking care of Link." She sniffled and looked up, gazing around at the three Sheikah. "You all waited so long for him to wake. I can't even begin to imagine the sacrifices you made." "It's all over now," Impa said. She reached up, dabbing at her eyes with a cloth. "You were both successful. You—" She paused, turning. "Link, get over here." He walked over, looking sheepish. He'd been giving her space for reunions, it would seem. But now that he approached, he quickly went to stand by Zelda's side. Impa gave each of them a warm smile. "You both saved us. You saved us all. She choked on her words, and Paya took her hand, patting it with one of her own. When the older woman composed herself again, she continued. "I was so worried when that thing... Oh, but to see you both here now." Link moved forward, to Zelda's surprise, and hugged Impa. The Sheikah quickly returned his hug. "Thanks for your help," he said, softly. A moment later, he added, "And I ruined another tunic. Sorry." Impa laughed, pushing him away and dabbing at her eyes once again. "It's a good thing I had a few more made, then." And she looked at Zelda. "I'm sure you are eager to get out of that dress." "Oh, yes, I am. And then I would like to light this dress on fire." "Well, come." Impa moved past Link and Zelda, towards the lab. "We assumed you might show up here eventually, considering Link's... Well, we thought you might come here."
"Click snap, that's right. Where did you two go,
Pura asked, looking at them slyly. Zelda lifted her chin. "That is hardly any of your business, Pura." She felt her cheeks growing warm, however, and it was hard to keep a straight face. Pura cackled.
"I think Robbie is going to owe me some more rupees. The question is whether or not Paya will."
Link groaned softly.
I did not bet anything with her,"
Paya said, her voice suddenly rising to a near panicked levels. She stared at Link with wide eyes, face burning a furious red.
"Oh, yes, you did. You and I bet that I never accepted that bet."
Zelda waved her hand, feeling the heat rising to the tips of her ears. "Let's drop this, shall we?"
"Yeah, let's,"
Link said, grabbing Zelda's hand and pulling her into the lab before Pura could go any further towards embarrassing them. Pura laughed merrily behind them. They all filed back into the lab, where Zelda saw a few others that she recognized only due to Link's proximity to them during his journey. Simon, Pura's assistant, Jaren, Robbie's wife, and their son, Grante, who stepped forward, shaking Link's hand and grinning. She smiled at each of them, but they were strangers to her. She probably should have greeted them more properly, but her attention was drawn to several other details. First of all was the lab itself. So messy, so... Pura.
She had never been able to make sense of Pura's methods of organization, though it certainly worked for her Sheikah friend. Secondly, she noticed the sweet, welcoming scent of tea. It made her begin to salivate. There, on the table, was the kettle and several mugs around it. Simon must have noticed her expression, because he stepped forward, pouring the amber liquid into a porcelain mug. "Princess?" he asked, turning towards her and holding it out to her. "Would you like some tea?"
Zelda eagerly took it from him. "Yes, thank you. Simon, was it?"
He nodded, smiling graciously. "It is an honor to meet you. Director Pura spoke of you often." She lifted the cup to her lips, inhaling the fragrant smell, and then took a sip. The flavor was... well, how did one even describe the sensation of taste after a lifetime without? It brought back memories and feelings of comfort, friendship, and cool autumn days spent studying in her tower or with the Sheikah at the Royal Lab. It filled her with warmth, and she smiled with contentment. And, for a time after, she remained in that place of bliss and peace. They sat at the table, sipped tea, and spoke of happier times. They laughed over some of the things that Link had done during his journey, and Pura mercilessly teased him, which he bore with the same quiet steadfastness he always had. She could tell in his expression, though, that it didn't bother him like it once had. He even occasionally traded jabs with her, poking fun at her de-aging experiments. Their relationship had changed too, as had his friendship with Robbie and even the other Sheikah in the room. Link had become a part of this group, even more, in a way, than Zelda was. They had worked together to secure this victory. Each of them had contributed, even the youngest members, such as Paya and Grante. She had assisted Pura with the tower, and he had worked very hard helping Robbie finish off the armor he used in the battle against Ganon. Of course, then they began to discuss Link's battle with Ganon. He, being how he was, told the story in a frustratingly humble manner. She filled in areas that he left out, however. His tale would be told accurately if she had anything to say about it. But eventually, they came to the subject that Zelda knew they would: the future. "Princess," Impa said, looking across at her from the table. "I know that this may not be the best time to discuss this, but I do think that we should consider where the Kingdom of Hyrule must go from here, and the role that you will play in its refounding." Zelda grew still, and Link sat up straighter beside her. A tense anticipation filled the room, though she may have imagined it. "It will be difficult, I fear." Impa frowned, looking down at her cup of tea. "I do not know of any Hylians alive that still remember being a part of a kingdom, though many have heard of the kingdom from parents and grandparents."
"I don't think it'll be too hard,"
Pura said, that sly smile appearing on her lips again.
"We just need to tell everyone that Link will be king. From what I've heard from the villagers, they're pretty much ready to put a crown on him already."
"It's not that simple," Impa said, giving her sister a stern look. "Princess Zelda is the heir to the throne of Hyrule, and it is her bloodline that should be established as such." She glanced across the table towards them. "If you two were to marry, I am sure that the union would lend strength to your claim, but I do not think that should be the primary approach used." Marriage. Union. If we marry, shouldn't it be for more than political necessity? Zelda frowned, but gave a start when she felt Link's calloused hand grip hers under the table. She glanced towards him and found his eyes on her, expression difficult to read. But the implication was clear. He would remain by her side, no matter what. She took a deep, steadying breath and squeezed his hand tightly. "Impa." She met the eyes of her old friend and advisor. This would hurt her. "I have not yet decided if I shall take the mantle of queen." Silence. Impa's expression registered shock. "I understand the state that Hyrule is currently in. Zelda continued, "and I understand the duty that would be expected of me. But I am just not certain that is what I wish to do." There. Simple. It wasn't a decision. Not really. More of a delay. She and Link needed to discuss this further. They needed time to decide on what they wanted for their future. She would not subjugate him to a life hemmed in by stone walls, not without his acceptance. And she would not pursue a relationship with him based out of a political necessity. "Princess Zelda." Impa's voice grew firmer, and Zelda could detect a touch of irritation there, though she tried to hide it. "I understand your hesitance. I do. We have no right to place this upon you after what you endured, after what you've accomplished. But our people need leadership. Without you, there is no Hyrule." "And is that so terrible?" Zelda asked. "My family has sat upon the throne since prehistory, because the goddess herself placed you upon that throne." Zelda shook her head. No, Impa, that's not true. Not really. In the beginning, there was no kingdom. The kingdom of Hyrule grew naturally over many generations, and it has risen and fallen time and again. It was never established by Hylia, though the monarchy has always enjoyed using that to justify their rule. Regardless, your family has held power for so long for a reason. You can't deny that you have been blessed by the gods. The power that you wield has nothing to do with my ability or lack thereof to lead. Princess, Impa, please. For now, she exhaled slowly and smiled. I would very much so like to just be Zelda. For my entire life I have been asked to be something other than myself, and I acknowledge that it was out of necessity. For now, just for now, I would like to be nothing more than who I am. Impa clenched her wrinkled hands into fists, staring across the table in disbelief. Zelda did feel some regret for this. The old Sheikah had likely dreamed of this day for the last 100 years. She was as loyal to the throne now as she was before the calamity. Very well. Zelda. The older Sheikah exhaled slowly, relaxing her hands. But you must realize that your window to claim the throne is likely small. Now that the calamity is finished, others will look to seize power. I believe that Link's influence with the other races will keep them from doing so militantly, but even that may not last very long. The longer you wait, the less likely it will be that you will be able to even make such a claim without opposition. And do you truly think that all of the Hylians will submit to my rule now? Zelda asked. You know as well as I do that a kingdom is more than its figurehead. Will they continue to support me when I demand taxation, or when I am forced to press their young men and women into military service? Impa did not immediately respond, lips forming a thin line. How long before they start to whisper that it was I who let the calamity happen in the first place? How long before some begin to question my worthiness to the throne? That the reason their families are so small, the reason that our people barely hang on to life in this country, is because I was unable to fulfill my duty in time, because I was unable to protect them. Her voice had risen in pitch and volume, and cheeks flushed with emotion. She felt tears in her eyes, and Link's hand gripping hers tightly. Zelda, Purah said, voice taking on a consoling tone. She closed her eyes, taking a few calming breaths. Finally, she opened them, meeting Impa's eyes. Impa, I fear the window for me to take command of Hyrule closed 100 years ago, when Ganon broke free and destroyed my kingdom. Impa released a soft sigh, and her expression grew compassionate. I understand your feelings, child. I am not a child. Not any longer. No, Impa said, nodding. You're right, and I apologize. Seeing you as you are now, it brings back memories of long ago. But I should not speak to you as if our positions were the same now as they were then. She fell silent for a time, considering. Perhaps we should table this discussion for now. You've asked for time to decide, and you've certainly earned that right. But may I ask what you do plan to do now that you've returned? Truthfully? Zelda smiled, grateful for the change of subject, and glanced towards Link. I don't know. I do, Link said, a satisfied expression appearing on his face. You do? She asked, confused. He met her eyes. Actually, I was thinking about going on a trip. There's the Sheikah shrine on the way to Rito village that I didn't activate yet, and since you said you wanted to see one. Oh! It took Zelda a moment to understand, but when she did, her eyes widened. Oh! That sounds like a good place to start, then. And when do you plan to embark on that journey? Impa asked. Any suggestion of the frustration she felt earlier had faded, though Zelda knew that she was likely still disappointed by her indecision. That was fine. She was more than used to disappointing others. Link shrugged. A few days at least. We'll need to prepare. Get Zelda a horse, new clothes, equipment. Did Spirit ever make it back?
Yeah, that Rito bard insisted I make a special trip just to grab him.
Pura said, lips forming a thin line. Is Cass here? Paya shook her head. No. He asked us to tell you that he would see you soon. He wanted to go back to tell his family the news and finish his song. The armies will start traveling back to their lands in the next few days, Impa said. But many of their leaders still wish to speak with you. In particular, these new champions. They will need to learn how to control their divine beasts properly if they are to take them back to their own lands. Zelda nodded slowly. Perhaps, she glanced toward Link. Perhaps, then, we should go to Hyrule Field first, before the shrine. He squeezed her hand firmly. They'll want to meet you. And, well, I did promise them that you would help them learn to control the divine beasts. Of course I'll help them, she said, feeling a thrill of excitement at the prospect. I'd like to meet them as well, and extend my gratitude for their help. Then we'll do that. Within the next day or so. There is a shrine not far from where the army camped. Zelda paused as she felt something new, but familiar. Another sensation that she hadn't felt in a very long time. There is something else I'd like to do now, though. What's that? Well, I'm hungry. Could you make something? Link's lips formed an excited grin. Yes, I can.
Link opened the door to his fireplace oven and peered in, smiling at the cuckoo, roasting over the low flames. Immediately its scent filled the house with a savory fragrance that made his own mouth water. He really hadn't eaten at all that day either. Had it really only been that morning when Pura woke him to help her activate the tower? It seemed like so long ago. Life could change so much in just a single day. He closed the doors to the fireplace and turned, surveying his house. It was clean, if not a little barren, though he could still see the little touches left behind by the Sheikah and his other friends. He appreciated the table and the small kitchen, well stocked with a variety of seasonings. He noticed that the house's small cellar had a number of vegetables and other foods as well. Paya probably did it all, he thought with a small smile. He could see her stocking them with these things while he was asleep after the battle for Hateno village, or sometime in the 2 weeks that followed, though it also could have been any number of those other grateful villagers. Either way, It meant that he didn't have to go shopping for more than fresh meat and a few other ingredients that he suspected Zelda would like. Zelda had remained behind, wishing to spend a little more time with the Sheikah. Link suspected that she actually just didn't feel ready to face the curious looks from the gathered people yet, and he could understand. Already the reaction he'd received had been unnerving. Purah hadn't been wrong. His status among the Hylians had only grown that much more. There was a soft knock at the door, and he turned hurrying towards it. It was probably another grateful villager coming to see him. Before he reached the door, however, it opened. He froze. Zelda stood in the doorway, but she no longer wore her white dress. Instead, she wore something far more familiar and comfortable. She had a long-sleeved white undershirt, blue blouse, and dark pants that she'd often chosen during their travels. Her hair now bore its customary braid, wrapped around her head like a crown, while the rest spilled down her back. The Sheikah slate hung comfortably from her hip, just as it always had. "Where did you get that?" Link asked, grinning broadly. "Impa is very resourceful, it seems," Zelda said, placing a hand on her hip. "We left all of our excess gear and clothing with her when we left for the castle, and she had this made based off of what I used to wear." "That explains a lot," Link said thoughtfully. "No wonder she had my measurements down so well." "Indeed." She met his eyes. "Do you like it? It suits you." "Thank you," she said, inclining her head and smiling. "Now, may I come in? I've never actually seen your house. At least, not from this perspective." His eyes widened and he backed out of the doorway to allow her to enter. She did so, and looked around, her expression curious. "It's not much," he admitted. "My mother always preferred living more simply. Couldn't stand having servants around." Zelda slowly walked around the room, looking up towards the rafters and running her fingers along the wooden surface of the counter, where he'd been preparing some of the food. Her eyes traced the bare walls, lingering on the fireplace oven, and then traveling up to the loft. "I love it," she said. She inhaled deeply through her nose, sighing happily. "Oh, Link, that smells so good. What is it?" Link felt a rush of delight at the compliment. He grinned and stepped over to the oven, opening one of the doors and letting more of the smell waft out. Zelda stepped up beside him, peering in, looking excited. "I figured we could go for something simple tonight. Simmered roasted cucco and rice. It's still got a little to cook, but it should be ready soon. And I picked up a fresh loaf of bread from town. I'd figured we'd eat half tonight and the other half tomorrow, for breakfast. With eggs." "That sounds wonderful." She backed away from the oven. "You know, I'm not sure if I've ever actually seen you cook in a kitchen." "I didn't get many opportunities back then." He closed the oven door again, so as to not let out too much of the heat. "I imagine that you'll be able to come up with all sorts of new things for me to try." His heart beat more quickly in his chest. He didn't know what would come next. Would she remain here with him? Was that what she suggested? The thought that she wouldn't seemed absurd, in a way. Yet, could he truly assume this was what she wanted? She might not want all the attention. "Zelda, you know, we haven't really discussed what will come next. For us." Her cheeks grew slightly pink. "No, I suppose we haven't, have we?" Link cleared his throat. Her expression was expectant. He suspected that she knew what he was going to suggest. "What do you think you'll want to do after we visit the shrine?" "I don't know." Zelda took a step towards him. "What do you want to do?" "I'd think you'd have as much to say in it as I do now." He hesitated. Old feelings of propriety made their suggestions. Thoughts that he should be silent, let her decide. Let her make the first move. But, well, He stopped truly worrying about propriety that very first time he agreed to walk by her side. I want to stay with you. I'm sure there are all kinds of things you want to study, now that you can. And I'll go with you. And when we grow tired of the road, maybe we could return here. Or somewhere like here, if the locals make us uncomfortable. She took another step forward and reached out, taking both of his hands in her own. Link. That sounds wonderful, but... She chewed her lip, looking suddenly anxious. What if Impa does raise some fair points? What if I am needed for the throne? What if I become queen? He squeezed her hands tightly in his own. Then, I guess I'd better figure out how to veil my insults better. Link, if I were to become queen, then you... I know. He exhaled slowly, looking up towards the rafters. Cass warned me about this, you know. Said that some people might suggest to put me on the throne. It will happen, Per is right. I'm sure people are already thinking they are. He looked down at her, smiling faintly. I've already overheard it. The news has gotten out. I saved a princess after all. I would never force you into that. You know that, don't you? I want you by my side, no matter what. But I would never force you into that life. You haven't forced me into anything. I told you, by your side is exactly where I want to be. Whether that is here, in this old house out in the wild, or on a throne. You shouldn't base such a decision entirely on wanting to be with me. Yeah, well, I also probably shouldn't have saved Hyrule based entirely on wanting to be with you, but when Ganon was gone, it's all I could think about. She moved forward, wrapping her arms around his torso and rested her head on his shoulder. I just don't know what to do. I want to help my people, but I never wanted to be queen, if I'm being honest. He hugged her against him. I know. But maybe we can help without that. Your knowledge, our knowledge of past Hyrule might be helpful. We could travel around, find any other pockets of Hylians out there. Maybe bring them together again, help rebuild. Even help get a government off the ground again, without us at its head. She remained silent, considering. He smiled faintly and kissed the top of her head. But, if that is the future that awaits us, I'll do it, Zelda. I would never let you face that alone. She nodded slowly, taking a deep breath, and grew more relaxed. Thank you. He held her like that for a long time, resting his cheek on her head. Finally, however, he had to ask the question burning within him. He lifted his head and looked down at her. Does this mean you intend on marrying me? Zelda looked up at him, eyes meeting his. Are you asking me? He held her gaze, trying to ignore the sound of his own heartbeat drumming away in his ears. If it's not too soon. She smiled. I would hardly call waiting 100 years too soon. To be fair, I was asleep for most of it, though I wanted to ask you this long before that. Her smile faded. You're sure? If we wed, and I do eventually take the throne, I'm sure. Would you marry me? Her expression brightened and she leaned forward. Yes, she whispered, lips brushing his. He tightened his grip around her waist, lifting her off the ground, and kissed her soundly.